Welcome back to Chai with Siddiq, where every week over a hot cup of chai we break down what happened in the market so you can make better money decisions. I am Siddiq and this is your weekly market wrap. This week was one for the books. On the surface, markets closed the week slightly positive, but the journey to get there was anything but smooth. And the reason markets recovered tells you a lot about what is driving global sentiments right now. Let's get into the numbers first, then the stories behind them. Let's run through our four standard indexes plus the rupee and oil. S&P 500 closed Friday at 7,431, up 0.5% for the week. That is a deceptively calm number. Midweek, the index had fallen all the way to 7267 on Wednesday. That is nearly a 2% intraday drawdown from where it started the week. But it came roaring back Thursday and Friday. The catalyst, and I will cover this in detail in a moment, was a major geopolitical development that changed the mood entirely. Nasdaq 100 closed Friday at 29,636, up about 0.64% for the week. Important context, the Nasdaq had already dropped nearly 5% the previous Friday and its worst single day since April 2025. This week it stabilized and recovered. Also worth noting that now we have SpaceX trading on the Nasdaq and its debut had a visible effect on the index. I will come back to that later. Now India. And India actually had a strong week. Nifty closed Friday at around 23,063, up roughly 2% from last week. Sensex surged nearly 1700 points on Friday alone, recovering to around 75,528. Big move. The midweek picture was tougher. The Nifty was under pressure early in the week. What helped? Two things. The Reserve Bank of India's liquidity measure gave Bank Nifty a shot of confidence on Tuesday, and then by Friday the global mood shift from the geopolitical news lifted everything. USD INR. The rupee firmed up to 95.11 by Friday from about 95.68. That is a strengthening of about 0.6%, small but in the right direction. For NRI sending money to India from the UAE, this is actually a reasonable time. The rupee is still historically weak, but the trend this week was in your favor. And then oil, Brent crude closed around $82 per barrel on Friday, down from $88 at the start of the week. That is a 6.4% weekly drop. That is the number that explains everything else this week. Let me tell you why. The single biggest story of this week was the US Iran situation. To give you context, oil had been elevated at around $97 a barrel coming into this week because of active conflict and fears that the Strait of Hormuz could be disrupted. The Strait of Hormuz, for those unfamiliar, is the narrow waterway through which 20% of global oil supply passes. Any disruption there is an immediate energy price shock. Midweek, President Trump suspended planned military strikes against Iran and signaled that Washington and Tehran were close to a deal. By Thursday, Trump indicated a major breakthrough had been reached, and by Friday, reports emerged of a 14-point draft agreement, including the lifting of oil sanctions on Iran and Iran's commitment to reopen the Strait of Hormuz within 30 days. Trump suggested the deal could be signed as early as this weekend. The news alone crashed oil by over 6% in a week and sent equity markets sharply higher. Less geopolitical risk plus lower oil equals lower inflation expectations, which means the Fed has little more room to breathe. Market priced all of that in very quickly on Thursday and Friday. Now, last week we covered the strong US job numbers in details, so I will not repeat that. But just to note the impact, that strong job data combined with ISM manufacturing and services both above 54 means the Fed is in no rush to cut rates. If the Iran deal reduces oil price structurally, that does help the inflation picture, but rates are not coming down anytime soon. And now, the other reason markets had a good Friday. SpaceX went public on Friday, ticker SPCX on the Nasdaq. IPO price was $135. The stock opened at 150 and 11% pop from the IPO price before a single retail trade was done. It closed at $161, a 19% gain on day one. Intraday high was 176. The market was genuinely excited. This is the largest IPO in history, larger than Saudi Aramco's 2019 listing, $75 billion raised. Valuation at IPO $1.75 trillion. But here is the honest picture. The SpaceX generated 18.7 billion in revenue last year with a 4.2 billion operating loss. Morningstar pegs fair value at around 780 billion, implying the current valuation has significant hype built in. The stock is a bet on Starlink, reusable rockets and deep space, not on current earnings. For NRIs in the Gulf with access to US equities through IBKR or Saxo, this will be a topic I cover in a dedicated video. For now, the excitement is real and so is the risk at this valuation. So, what does this week means if you are an NRI sitting here in the UAE or the Gulf? Three things. One, global markets are resilient but volatile. Do not let a midweek drawdown panic you out of your positions. Two, India held up well and actually outperformed the US this week. 3. If you have been waiting for a better rupee rate to remit, the trend this week was in your favor at 95.11. And if the US Iran deals get signed this weekend, and we do not know yet whether it will, this could be a meaningful positive for global markets next week. That is your weekly chai. If this was useful, share it with a friend who is navigating markets from the Gulf. We could all use a little clarity over a cup of chai. Like, subscribe, and I will see you next Saturday. Invest wisely, not impulsively.